Okay, I am sitting here having my morning coffee, trying to psych myself up for getting going. The last 2 days have just been hell water-wise. I was, dehydrated when I got into Farida, and then that mess last night with the cache. I would have been thirsty when I got to the cache. I had, that much water left. I still can't quite believe the lady in the RV that when I approached and said, "Hey, I'm having a little bit of an emergency. Can you spare some water?" She just said, "No, get out of here." I know I was wandering around in the dark, and I hate approaching people's campsites, but yeah. And then right after that ATV that I was like waving my arms trying to flag down. Bob Balin actually jumped into his car and was, I don't know, like an hour on his way to come give me water in the middle of the night. He lives like 3 hours away. Before I was able to find those nice Australians in the van who filled me up. Unfortunately, that does mean that I'm going to need to get more water to even get out of here. It's like 18 miles to the next cache. The next cache is buried, not on the surface, so hopefully the rodent issue won't be a thing. Apparently, this was the first time he's had this issue at this cache. I am feeling pretty trashed after last night. Unfortunately, I don't have much choice but to get going. It's already unpleasantly warm. I am not in an official campsite. I would have been, except all the ones after those nice folks gave me water were full, and it was dark, and I just didn't have anything left in the tank. So I came up behind some trees, found some durable ground, and that was it. And with slightly less than complete enthusiasm, I am off. I currently have about 2 liters of water on me, which is not enough to make the 18 miles to the next cache, particularly in this heat. So I am dependent on begging some more water. Otherwise, I'm kind of stuck. The amazing Bob Palin, in addition to taking off last night and driving towards me in the event I couldn't get water, he did offer to come out this morning to top me off. He's 3 hours away though, like each way. So I didn't want him to do that. I was very appreciative last night as a fallback because I was kind of in emergency mode there. I was down to that or finding somebody, or at some point I was going to have to hit my SOS beacon. And if it was, that or a serious consequence, okay, but that just felt like the height of irresponsibility to run myself out of water and then call for help. Not to mention, based on my previous experiences, there is a non-zero case that they might have responded with a helicopter instead of just sending like a highway patrol guy out with water. Huge thanks to Chris and his wife, the Aussies who gave me water last night. I never got a good look at them. It was in the dark. They had a rather playful dog that was a little too interested in me. But they kind of saved my butt there. I'm still kind of disbelieving about that lady in the RV telling me to get lost when I said I had a little bit of emergency. Could she spare some water? But it is what it is. People being fearful and on edge in this country is unfortunately kind of the reality these days. But seriously, she had a full-on big RV running a generator, and there were like cans of White Claw she'd left all around outside. So this is the freeway access I was heading for last night. I was texting with Jen, and she was trying to convince me to just stay put rather than keep walking. I didn't want Bob to have to come all this way if he didn't need to, and not to mention I would have been sitting there miserably thirsty for, 3 hours or so. So I was walking towards this. Per Google, there is a trucker pullover area. So I was figuring I would start knocking on cabs of truckers and hope somebody had some water they could spare me. But it worked out. The last 2 days have been pretty rough heat-wise. It's 93 degrees. I was just explaining to somebody how if it's 95 or above, there's no question I siesta in the middle of the day. So this is about as rough as it gets as far as me trying to function during the day. And a big part of me after yesterday just wants to siesta through the heat of the day, but Then I miss cool views like, views of the Colorado yesterday. And if there is a water issue, trying to knock on somebody's camper in the middle of nowhere at 2 o'clock in the morning, it's just asking for trouble. I did have that thought approaching the RV. I mean, I was calling out and I had my light, but it's like, well, I haven't had a gun pulled on me in a couple of years. That streak might end here. The water cache last night looked like it had rodents or something chewing through it. The next the next one anyway, is listed as buried. So it's possible something gets into it, but probably a lesser chance. Bob is also going to run out and check some of them in a couple of days after he has something he needs to deal with. So this is a bad start to the water cache. It's a bad start to basically Utah. I don't cross the border here for another 4 or 5 miles, but yeah, I'm just trying to keep my chin up and keep moving forward. Some of the sources later also have, the Colorado River accessible a few miles away, which would have been a great backup. I was evaluating at the cache, okay, well, if I back up to Salt Creek by the rail tracks, that would be one option. And it was just too far back, and I wasn't sure I was going to be able to access the shore. So pushing forward to the freeway seemed like the better option. Chafing wise, I'm not sure what I can do at the moment other than hope it's just more based on, sweaty conditions, dust, etc. It does look like the compression shorts that I had been using, the Walmart McDavid brand, may have changed their construction. They used to have a logo on the leg, and it looks like some of the seams are different. And that could be a problem. Part of the reason I moved away from the Under Armour ones, in addition to the fact they wore out between the legs, is they actually had a sewing seam that rubbed in a particular spot and had me in a heck of a lot of pain. Unfortunately, both of the ones that I have on me are that newer rendition, so if it's that, I am kind of SOL, at least for a while. Okay, faith in humanity at least partially restored. They topped off my water, so I am back to the gallon and I have had something to drink. I have lost count of the conversations I've had with people along the way where I'm talking about XYZ, and their response is basically, oh yeah, well, people used to be nice when I was a kid, but these days they just aren't. And I tell them, I have run into such nice people so many places. I really think it more comes down to the perception that everything is bad and that people are bad versus that actually being the reality. And I do personally really blame just kind of mainstream media. You have no idea how many conversations I have had where somebody's like, oh, where are you from? And I'm almost hesitant to answer, because if I say the word California, you would not believe how often I get just like shitty comments. And I try and picture the opposite. If I was like meeting somebody randomly and I'm like, oh, where are you from? And they're like, oh, I'm from Nebraska. And I'm like, oh, I hate Nebraska. It is the worst. Or I don't care for Nebraska. The trees are okay, but everything else sucks. And yet I get that so often. The most hilarious one was West Virginia. Talked to some guy and he made the comment, oh yeah, West Virginia gets a bad rap in the media, but it's really pretty. And I'm like, oh yeah, I understand. I get that a lot. I'm from California. And his response just off the cuff was, oh, but California, it is actually that bad. So about as political as I get most days out here is political tribalism sucks. Turn off the TV that's just trying to make you angry at everything. And, there are good people out there that you will run into. So I have 17-ish miles to the next cache. I have a gallon of water on my back. I am relatively well hydrated, so I am feeling better. One of those 1.5 liters is actually kind of syrupy Gatorade, but any port in a storm. At the moment, I don't even care how many miles I make. I have to make the next cache. Beyond that, I'm just in survival mode here. I may run short on food towards Moab if I don't make enough miles, but like I said, at the moment I don't care. And every day my pack gets lighter. Yesterday was supposed to be the worst since 6 days of food and all that water, and I was just trying to make the minimum so I could camp. And yeah, that'll be a day I remember for a long time. It is Saturday now, so there will probably be more people out and about. I saw a bunch of people near the start of the Kokopelli, but once I was a few hours in, I didn't see a single other person outside of the trains. And that is normally exactly what I'm looking for. It was just when the whole water situation happened. Heck, I was actually happy to see the RV with the generator running until it turned out they were not nice. I just can't get over that. I keep thinking, okay, what would my personal circumstances have to be to the point where somebody in the desert approached me, said, "Excuse me, I'm having an emergency. Could you please spare a little bit of water?" And to just tell them, no, get the hell out of here. But okay, that was yesterday. We're on to a brand new day, brand new problems. I tend not to repeat problems that much, so considering the dehydration issues the last 2 days, I'm expecting something brand new. And maybe kidney stones. Haven't had those out here. 9 a.m. and I am already living under my bloody umbrella. I may end up siestaing today. On the plus side, my pack is feeling noticeably lighter. I ate the straight bean bag last night since that takes up more room than the rice and beans. And the rice and beans have taco seasoning, which is salt, which is the thing I crave out here. So I was saving those. And I ate a lot of peanut butter and as many heavy snacks as I could yesterday. Okay, I have apparently officially survived Colorado once again, despite this state's attempts to slow me down or stop me, as celebrated by the sign stating no water on trail. So I'm now in Utah. There is 590 miles, I think, of Utah versus 876 of Colorado. So it is shorter. It is still another very, very long state, followed by Nevada, which is another 500 some miles. And then California is just like 300 something because, east-west instead of north-south. I feel like the last couple of days has kind of beat a lot of the joy I had at being back in the desert out of me. But that's okay. Things are getting better. There is a water cache in another 12 miles. There's a good chance this one will actually be there since it is buried, and the hot weather can't last forever, theoretically. At the moment, it's lasting for at least the next 10 days, though. I will say, while Colorado always seems to be a little bit problematic for me, I did really enjoy getting to do it long ways instead of north-south. I felt it gave me a much better feel for the geography, I guess. And there are areas like Grand Mesa I didn't actually know existed. I've done a lot of driving back and forth across Colorado, but most of the things I'd done were either obviously CDD corridor. And I had family up in like Fort Collins, Poudre Canyon, those type areas. If today goes how I think it's going to go, I am basically maintaining my usual pace, which is kind of disappointing. On the big three trails, 120 miles a week, that was usually steady state for me. And that's what I've been doing since I've been back. It's just disappointing in light of, Kansas and the previous states where I was able to maintain 150, 170 miles per week. Those are the flats versus the mountains, though. As far as Utah, I have done a fair amount. A lot of peaks, some canyons, and the occasional just like we backpacked Grand Gulch a couple of years ago. Once I get down to Moab, I'm actually rather near the track from when we did the Green River paddle, and I've been to various national parks out here, a bunch. Utah used to be one of my big destinations for my Thanksgiving Turktacular trip, where I'd, go out for the extended long weekend. So I am looking forward to this. Once I get to go out of survival mode and thrive a little bit more. So that's an earthen pond. I did actually see a big one of those on the satellite shot last night, and I'm not beyond trashing my filter, just getting something drinkable out of that. Taste ain't great, but is what it is. However, to even go and check that would have been pretty far off the trail itself, and I felt like I really didn't have time to screw around at the point I was out of water. If I didn't have the road there, if I didn't have likelihood of people camping, if I didn't have the thing where Bob could have brought me water, that would have been a fallback. That was the only real fallback, other than backtracking all the way back to Salt Creek, Salt River, whatever it was. I just didn't have a high confidence that there was actually going to be anything in those earthen tanks. It's not the time of year where there's a whole heck of a lot of water out here. Every time I see an awesome view like this, all I can think is, I wish I wasn't here in the middle of the blazing sun. Sunrise or sunset. Life is better in the shade. It is 2 o'clock, and if I can find shade that's deep enough, I think I'm going to pull over for a couple hours. Even with, unlimited amounts of colder water, it gets rough at this temperature, and I only have so much to get me to the next cache. Okay, I am loath to give up the hiking time, and I will feel a lot better when I'm near that cache, but it is just too hot to function well here. I have been far happier hanging out here in the shade, but I just happened to turn my phone on to check a message from Jen. She's testing the satellite feature on a Sierra trip this weekend. And somebody messaged me on Instagram with the magic words, cold water and Coke, so I think I might pack up and at least get to the top of the mesa here. They think they can get to me. Okay, so somebody's going to try and get to me, but they're in a Subaru, and I didn't think it was a good idea for them to try coming down this, so I'm going to get to the top of the mesa. I am still conserving water because there's always a possibility that they can't make it to me, but cold water and Coke. Also, as reluctant as I am to give up daylight hiking time, I think I'm just going to have to start doing the siesta thing, at least for the next day or 2, or 3 or 4 week, or however long this lasts. At a certain point, you go through so much water, it just isn't viable unless you've got fill-up points. And even if I was to just go crazy and carry 2 gallons of water, it gets to the point where it's boiling hot and you drink it and it doesn't refresh you at all. That was the great thing about the New Mexico cow wells. They were pumping water up from the ground, so it was usually cold. So even if it was super hot when I got there, I could just chug and it lowered my body temperature and was oh so refreshing. At least there has been periodic shade out here. I do admit most of today, every time an ATV goes by me, a lot of them have coolers strapped onto the back, and I can't help but just eye it longingly as it goes by. Imagine what it's like to open it, what's inside, what it would feel like to stick my head inside of it. Oh, the twisted things that trail life does to you. Okay, today is now a much better day. Terry showed up and gave me cold sodas and cold water, and yeah, I am feeling so much better. That was just basically the definition of trail magic. Came out of nowhere and made such a huge impression. I know I've said it before, but on the Appalachian Trail and even the PCT these days, trail magic's just so common. There were times where there were like 3 or 4 instances in a day because people were just set up at every saddle. It's still cool. I really enjoyed chatting with folks. You know, you always appreciate the sentiment, but it's not that magical versus like in 2020, there was only like 3 times we got trail magic on the PCT. Guy pops out with like a cold watermelon or that massive setup we got in NorCal. And it really makes it special, magical. So for once, I actually have more water than I need, and it feels bloody glorious. I have about 5 miles to the next cache. So I am chugging and catching up. I think I've already drank a couple of liters. So I think my plan for the next day or two is going to be start relatively early, hike until maybe about 2 whenever the heat starts getting to me. Wait it out until 4:30 or so. It's at least feeling a little cooler now. And then hike a little past dark. Terry was asking me if I was night hiking at all, and I was telling him, you know, it can be kind of cool hiking by a headlamp and all that, but you miss out on the views, and there were some like really spectacular spots yesterday and this morning, you know, looking down on Colorado River and the rafting groups and things like that. Versus at night, you miss all that. You miss kind of the big scale of hiking out west. And if I'm in the middle of the plains of Kansas, there isn't a lot to miss. But this is, Colorado, Utah, there's pretty stuff out here. There are some rather nice car camping spots out here. Okay, moment of truth. So, per the cache note, it should be behind the tree across from the sign. Okay, no crisis tonight, looks like. So, considering the events of yesterday and the day before that, I am pretty water cautious at the moment. So, my plan is I am currently drinking one of these, maybe a little more. I'm going to fill my gallon, and then I'm just going to carry another gallon with me in my hand. That'll let me get another, 4 or 5 miles, maybe, get around my daily, and then I will have plenty of water for the morning, because it's another 20 some miles to the next one. And before I was like, 20 miles, that's not that big a deal, but yeah. I'm a little gun shy at the moment. Even after I'm taking 2 gallons, there's plenty here. I'm also the only one out here this year, so Bob has said take as much as I need. I'm not shorting anybody else. Okay, rather than break into another jug, I compromised. I have a gallon of water on my back, which feels just atrocious, and I have about 3/4 of a jug. Main goal with that is just to get me through tonight. The dry camp overnights, where I know I have 15 plus miles in the morning, are kind of my biggest exposure out here as far as water issues. It's hard for me to conserve at night / in the morning. Well, short of just not eating my dinners. So I'm not intending to do anything too crazy tonight, just use up the rest of the daylight. I'm also really enjoying my Neil Stevenson book at the moment, and that has me not wanting to stop despite some foot issues. But hey, overall today has been a much better day. And not just because, you know, the water cache was actually functional and somebody showed up with cold things, but those are nice. Holy actual pavement, Batman. Wasn't really expecting that. Huh. There is actually a group campsite down here. After I got the water cache info, Jen went through and added everything she could find, and I added some notes I had. So there are options out here, but this section would be damn difficult, if not impossible, without caches. The only other person I've talked to who did this section, they didn't do the whole ADT, they just did part of it connecting some other trails. They ended up getting freaked out by the lack of water, renting a car in Grand Junction and setting caches for themselves. And honestly, that would probably be the point I would be at. There is one section in Nevada after the caches are, the Palin caches are done, where there's apparently like a 50-mile water carry. And I'm gonna have to look hard at that one. I was kind of afraid of that. So interestingly enough, when I stopped, I could actually hear elk bugling off to my left. It is now a little after 8. I am currently missing the days of those, 9:30, 10 o'clock sunsets. I would like to stop just so I can eat and get to bed at a reasonable time. I currently would just kind of like to get away from the train tracks, though. I don't know how busy they are, but that is not the best way to wake up in the middle of the night, I will tell you from experience. Okay, not my ideal camp. The trail road is right there and the train's not that much further, but it's time to call it. Home sweet home.